going to go ahead and introduce Apryl here. She's coming to us to do a continuation from the workshop that she presented last month in December. We definitely are happy to have her back here with us so that she can continue on with her great expertise of trauma of money. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Apryl as we get started with our empowered finances, healing money, trauma, shame, and scarcity. We're honored to have Apryl, who is Diné, lead this session. She has over 20 years of experience serving Diné and Indigenous communities. Apryl is passionate about rebuilding Native nations, advancing social justice, and healing intergenerational trauma. As a business coach with Change Labs, she supports Native entrepreneurs here with us. So she's also able to do coaching sessions. So definitely look out for her on our website. This interactive workshop will help you reconnect with Indigenous wealth traditions and build a stronger financial foundation. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Apryl.
Yeah, Sophia. Yate, everybody. Welcome. Very excited to see so many people who are returning for the second part of this workshop series, as well as new faces and new friends. And some of my Coaching for Healing and Justice Liberation coaches fam are on the call, which is awesome. So excited to see you all here, and friends and colleagues from all different parts of my life. I'm excited to be in community with everybody. Let me go ahead and get my screen share going here. While I do that, I'm just gonna do my introduction in Dinepazad Yat A. Everybody, Sha'e Ashihin Ishlent, Tachini Bashichin, Tabhedashache, Kinta Chini Dashanele, Sha'e April Yanishya. So I just introduced myself and my Navajo clans. If I have some relatives out there, shout out to all of you calling in from near and far. Really happy to be back and appreciative of Change Labs and the team here for allowing me to bring this much needed resource and topic into the community, into the space. And so just wanted to share a little bit about what we're going to chat about today. A little bit of introductory things to kind of set the container and the environment in our space today. As Sophia mentioned, this is the second part of a workshop that I did in December. So I'm going to do like a quick recap of some main points from that workshop for those of you who were not able to attend or haven't had a chance to watch the recording. Plus, it could also be a helpful refresher for some of us. We're going to dive into financial shame a little bit more and ways to decrease shame and to heal shame. We're going to talk a lot about financial fawning and rejection and really dive into some practices and resources, because I really would love to have all of us walk away with some like tips or tools or some practices that we can implement in our daily life, as well as jump into some discussion and Q&A. So let's get started. Wanting to just set the space, want to make sure that this is a trauma-aware space, as well as make sure that you feel safe and comfortable in this space today, in this virtual space. So consent is really important. Just want to share that you and I are at choice of what we want to share today, how we want to engage with the content today. Some stories sometimes are not yet ready to be shared, and others may be, and so we'll see what comes up today. And also in regards to consent, this workshop is being recorded by Change Labs, which is great so that it's a resource for others later, but that might also inform just some of your choice of what you want to share and engage with today as well. Advocating for our needs. So we're all resourceful. We all have wonderful tools and resources, around us. And just want to say that as we dive into this topic, we are going to obviously talk about trauma. We're going to talk about mental health, other aspects that sometimes might be activating to our brains and to our nervous system. So just want to make sure to encourage all of us to, be mindful of our needs. I have water and tea here. You may need to have some things around you to just kind of make you feel comfortable in the space as we engage in some of the topics today. And lastly, non-closure. So sometimes for some of us who have experienced trauma, we have this need for closure to kind of help make sure that we feel safe. And because we're just tapping into like very, very like introductory areas of these topics, and we have limited time today as well, that there may be some topics that we connect to today that we actually don't have time for that closure. And so just want to bring awareness to that so that our brains and bodies can be ready for that, and that some topics we may kind of like touch the iceberg of it and then the tip of the iceberg and then like have to move on. But just wanting to be mindful of that we may not have closure in some of our topics today. So I wanted to share a little bit about who I am. For some of you I haven't met yet. I shared a little bit of my story last time, and I thought this time I would share some other aspects of my story. So as I mentioned, I am Diné from the Navajo Nation, calling in from Tuba City, where the Change Labs eShip Hub is. It's actually my birthplace. And I didn't grow up here, though. I was born here and then moved away and grew up in the city off the reservation. Some of the parts I'm going to share about my story that like led me to this work to become a trauma of money facilitator is going to jump into some aspects of like my experiences with trauma. So just kind of a content warning that, you know, some of the things I may share might be a little activating, or maybe you might, you know, have experienced some of these things too. And so it might, you know, kind of bring up some things for you. So just to take care of yourself as I share just a brief story about like my journey and leading me to this work. I decided this time I wanted to explain my story more utilizing two different frameworks that if you've studied trauma and like learned a lot about the impact of trauma, you've probably heard of. And one of those frameworks is called ACEs, which is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So ACEs are traumatic events or toxic stressors that happen to a person before the age of 18 years old. And ACEs, there's a huge study on this. There's tools and assessments you can use. You can actually like assess like what your ACE score is. And the whole like premise around ACE is that it analyzes the relationship between childhood trauma and social and health consequences later in life. And so when I think about my story and my experience with trauma, you know, I do have kind of a higher ACE score. And so just to share a little bit about that, I'm actually the eldest child of 4 children. I grew up with a single parent, and my siblings and I, so there's 4 of us and I'm the oldest, and out of all 4 of us, we actually have different fathers. So that makes like for some really interesting family dynamics. And because of that type of situation that I grew up in, some of the adverse childhood experiences I had, some of the trauma I experienced, one of them is called parentification, which is something I talked about at the last session, which is basically when a child is expected to take on responsibilities that are beyond their developmental level. So that could be caring for a parent, caring for younger siblings, things like that. I've also witnessed like unhealthy relationships where domestic violence was present sometimes. I also witnessed like caretakers and other adults in my life, not my mom, but other people in my life who were struggling with substance abuse. And that's also like a form of trauma. Growing up in a single parent household, you know, we grew up with limited resources, living in scarcity, sometimes instability, which that also can cause like a lot of toxic stress and worry. And that's also a form of trauma. On top of that, also realizing and understanding that as an Indigenous person, we carry a lot of like historical and intergenerational trauma as well, caused by like colonization, forced assimilation, societal oppression, and a lot of that historical trauma that I have experienced through just like my family lineage has to be due to like the disconnect of Diné identity and disconnect from culture and language, you know, these things that are actually really like good medicine for us. On the flip side of that, there's a framework called PACES, which is an interesting acronym. The acronym stands for Protective and Compensatory Experiences, which basically means like positive experiences that I had in my life that were actually buffers to the effects of the trauma, to ACEs. It actually helps promote resilience as well as being protective factors in my life. So some of the PACEs that I experienced in my life, one was having a loving and supportive caregiver. My mom, being a single mother, like big shout out to her. She had a lot of strength and a lot of like wisdom in knowing the type of love and support she wanted to give her children. And so like in my family, it's like she's shown and exemplified like unconditional love And if you ever hung out with my family, we have a lot of love in our family, which is really beautiful. And that's really, from her. So I had that type of experience. I also had access to education and opportunities. I was, fortunate to be like good in school. And even though I'm critical of like the Western education system in some ways, it also gave me some really amazing experiences that allowed me to be resilient and to flourish in these different spaces. And even though we grew up with limited like resources, my mom like made like miracles happen. I was thinking about the Dear Mama Tupac song this morning, about how in that song, he's like, all like, what did he say? Like, she made miracles every Thanksgiving. Like, that was my mom. Like, even if like we didn't have a lot of resources, if there was an opportunity for me to go on a school trip, to like be involved in some type of activity that costs money, my mom figured it out. Like, we figured it out, and I was able to have access to some really incredible opportunities, which really helped, again, build that resilience, right? And in my experience in school, like, I also connected with a lot of wonderful positive role models and mentors. And that's like also another example of PACEs, people who really took care of me, and not just teachers, but also neighbors and friends and other role models that really showed up for me in different ways. And so I wanted to just highlight how like our life stories are like full of complexities and nuances, and how like even if we have experienced trauma, there's like a lot of opportunity for us to heal and to like strengthen some of these areas of our life to like overcome a lot of that trauma. And the other thing I want to mention too is that I'm also a work in progress. Like, I'm still healing. And even though I'm here today as a certified trauma of money facilitator, doesn't mean like I'm an expert in this. I'm sharing a lot of my story here. A lot of this is just like personal experience. And a healing journey is lifelong. It's not like ever going to end. And so it's like always evolving, and we're always learning. And the other thing I want to mention too is that regardless like of the type of trauma we went through, there's opportunities to heal. And that some of the trauma like I have experienced, even though it may not be directly linked to money, trauma can still affect our relationship with money. So here's a quick recap of workshop 1 that I wanted to just share real quickly. So some of the trauma of money, like our goal or our tagline is to decrease shame and to increase discernment. And so we're going to talk more today about shame and like ways to like recognize and raise awareness around shame, but also ways to decrease it, as well as like increase that discernment, increase our ability to like make good choices, have like put on a lens where you can have like better judgment and assessment about certain situations. And so, yeah, so our tagline in Trauma Money is decrease shame, increase discernment. We also talked last workshop around like these different types of financial trauma. And so I tend to speak from personal experience. So I kind of focus more on like chronic financial distress, poverty, and scarcity. And I want to recognize like these are other types of financial trauma that maybe you or your family have experienced that we want to raise awareness around and bring into this space. One of the things we focused on a lot last time too was around how trauma impacts our brains and our bodies and our nervous systems. So at the last workshop, I had everybody like hold up their hand and like form a brain, and we talked about these different parts of the brain. And so basically, when we are in a trauma active situation or our nervous systems are really activated, we lose access to certain parts of our brain. So when we are in a trauma response, our rational thinking and our like ability to like regulate emotions and to make like good decisions and like rational decisions shuts off. And our amygdala, which is alarm system, is just going off, and just what it's thinking about, and like the brain's main focus is around survival. It wants to make sure that you survive whatever situation you're in. And so all these other parts of the brain shut off. And that's something to keep in mind as we talk about different topics today. We also talked about last time some of the different trauma responses or reactions that we may have when we are in a trauma activated state. And one of those is fight. Sometimes like when you get you're in a situation, you feel a threat, whether it's an emotional threat, a physical threat, you may get into fight mode where you want to be like really defensive. You may have a lot of anger, a lot of just like fighting energy may come out. The other response could be flight, where you're just like, I need to escape. I need to get out of here. I'm being threatened, like either whether it's an emotional threat, a physical threat, I need to like leave this situation in this environment right away. Freeze is when like you're just like paralyzed, like you're immobile. You have no ability to like do anything, make a decision, and you're just like frozen. And today we're going to talk a lot more about fawning. So I'll wait until we dive into that more later. The last thing I want to share, just as a recap, is around like what happens to our brain when we are living in scarcity. So when we're living in scarcity, or we're living in a situation where we think we are scarce, it reduces our cognitive capacity. It reduces our ability to process information, lose our ability to like make decisions, to organize things, to regulate ourselves and our bodies. That scarcity causes our brains to like shut off in certain areas. And so you may feel activated and not be able to make like certain decisions or make good choices in certain situations. So let's dive into financial shame more. I know we touched on this just a little bit last time, but this section is a number of things that we weren't able to cover. And so we want to identify and disrupt financial shame. As I mentioned before, the Trauma of Money tagline is to decrease shame and to increase discernment. So let's talk a little bit about financial shame. There is this Dr. Devin Price, who wrote this like book that I will share later, specifically around like unlearning shame. And there's a really wonderful like YouTube video of a webinar he was on that he like dives into this even more. So if you're interested in this topic, I definitely recommend checking it out. But one of the things he highlights is that there are 5 core values of financial and systemic shame. And what I love about like his perspective is how he recognizes that it's like systems that are set up that impact a lot of like where our shame comes from and what we may be experiencing. So when we think about financial and systemic shame, these are the 5 core values, one of them being individualism. And so especially in American society, but in a lot of Western societies, especially under capitalism, the economic system is very focused on the individual, like wanting the individual to win, to be in competition with others, and to solely be focused on their own needs and not be like worried or thinking of collective. And this type of like behavior and this type of value also causes like isolation, because you can feel very much like on your own and like you're just trying to get out and do this thing by yourself, right? The other one is consumerism, that this value is basically that like our worthiness is measured by what we can buy, what we own. There's a big focus in like, having like the dream, like American life of like owning a vehicle, owning a home, like all of these things, which many of those things are really good. But when we only focus on like consumerism in connection to our worthiness, that can lead to us feeling shame because maybe we don't have those things or we're having difficulty accessing those things. Another value is perfectionism. And I have had a lot of trouble. I'm like a recovering perfectionist. Around perfectionism is like where like we just consistently are striving to do everything perfectly, which is impossible, right? We're human and like nobody is perfect. And yet this value is really pervasive in some situations. And it can show up in ways where it's like, if I'm not perfect, if I can't do this perfectly, then I'm not worthy or I'm not good or something's wrong with me. And so then that's where the shame can come into play. Wealth is the power through financial wealth, and wealth mainly focusing on money. And so that in order to gain power, you have to be financially wealthy. And the last one here is personal responsibility, that change only happens through personal willpower and strength. which is really hard because like if you have trouble doing something or you're trying something out for the first time and you fail, you feel like, oh, it's all my fault. I am not good. Something's wrong with me. Why can't I do this? Right. And that shame again gets perpetuated in these situations. And so when we also think about personal responsibility, it dismisses systemic oppression. It dismisses the systems in play that actually may impact like our ability to do certain things. So destructive financial shame cycle is something that can happen. So if you are experiencing shame, and I've experienced shame for sure, this definitely, you can end up in this like cycle that can just really be overwhelming. So like, as we talked about perfectionism. So for an example, say you're trying to budget, right? You're trying to get control of your finances. You're trying to assess like your financial situation. And you're thinking like, I wish that I like had my personal budget set up every month really perfectly. I wish I had a way to track my money, you know, in a certain way. I wish that like, oh, I'm overspending again. Why can't I like keep it under my budget, you know, budgeted amount for the month? So you're feeling like I have to do this perfectly. And if you don't, then that's where a lot of like the shame and the shunning feelings and like start coming into play. That energy starts to affect you and it starts to bring you down. And that can lead you to procrastination where you're like, well, if I can't do this thing perfectly, then I'm just not going to do it right now, or I'm going to avoid it. And then that tends to cause a lot of other kind of like dysregulation. Other feelings and behaviors may come out, and you may start feeling like I need to soothe this pain, right? I need to soothe like this discomfort. And this may cause, you know, you to start doing some compulsive spending, maybe even like the opposite of that, like even hoarding a lot of your resources. And then leading to paralysis, where then you're just like in that freeze state I was mentioning earlier, where you just like avoid it. You're just like, I just don't want to look at it. I don't want to check my bank account. I just don't want to deal with it. So I'm just going to like not even take a look at it. And then that increases more shame. And then you can be stuck in this cycle. And so I want to just like normalize this. Like this is something, even as I've been learning this, like even last month during the holiday, I kind of felt like I was in this shame cycle. And I want to normalize the fact that like this is okay. Like the more awareness we start to raise around this, the more we can start to like heal and decrease that shame. And it's all right. We can end up in these positions, in these places, in different parts of our life, regardless of where we are on our healing journey. One of the ways they like help with decreasing shame is to ask this question, like, whose shame is this? Because sometimes like the shame most of the time it's not because of you as an individual. It's not you personally. It's actually coming from something else. It's coming from society's like pressure. Maybe it's coming from some like ancestral lineage or things that were passed down to you from either a parent or a caregiver, or maybe even like generations before you, right? And so this can really help like give pause to like what you're experiencing and start to kind of think and reflect on like, whose shame is this? Like, and you can use this for all sorts of things. So these are examples here on this slide. Like, I'm feeling really angry today. Like, whose anger is this? Is this mine? Is this coming from somebody else? Whose people pleasing is this? Whose burden is this? So this is a really good like question to just ask yourself when you are feeling stuck in certain cycles in certain areas. Another part of like decreasing shame is this pro-social shame. And you can Google this and you can like learn more and hear others talk about this topic. But I love this so much. It's around like having safe spaces like this and others where you can like be radically honest and open about your story and about like the type of shame you might be experiencing, and to be able to share it in a certain way where in the community you feel safe, you feel connected, you feel like, I'm not going to be judged. Like, this is a space I can start sharing my story. And I'll be honest, like this has been really helpful for me as I've been, on this more intentional healing journey. Even like sharing a little bit of my story at the beginning of this session, it took me a while to get to that point to be able to tell people certain things because I was carrying a lot of shame. But as I've been sharing and being more open and vulnerable about like my story and my upbringing, it has like tremendously helped me in just like releasing and letting go. And so, I really hope that like each of us like have these spaces, whether it's one-on-one with a friend, maybe you're working with a therapist or a coach, in other like community spaces where you can feel open about like sharing your story and things that maybe some shame you've been carrying and how you can like start to release that and let it go. Pro-social shame is like all about like just being open and honest about your story and sharing that with others, and then feeling acceptance and empathy from the people that you're sharing it with. This process also helps to like reframe any beliefs that were like not benefiting you. And so, like it says, reframing the belief as something that was helpful in the past. So an example of this, like from my own personal like journey, is like in the past, like when I was in college, I took out a credit card. Had no idea how to handle a credit card. I should not have been given one. But I got a credit card and I purchased a laptop, and it was the first laptop I've ever purchased on my own. I was so excited about it. I spent, let's say like $1,000. I don't remember how much it was back then, but yeah, let's just say $1,000, right? And I didn't really know how to like pay that off. Like I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't understand like how you had to pay off, over time. And so it accumulated a ton of interest. And probably in the end, I ended up like buying that computer for like 4, maybe 5 times more than it actually was like what it cost. But when I think about that story, I think about, okay, if I'm going to reframe that, I'm like, well, you know what? Like, I'm fortunate I had access to that credit card because it gave me that laptop and I was able to do all my college assignments on it. I was able to do a lot of important work that helped me complete, my college degree. Another reframe would be like, like, yeah, I like could have saved money, but you know what? Like I paid that off, right? I paid it off eventually. I got a handle on it. I learned a lot of lessons from that situation, right? And so that's like just a short example of like ways to kind of reframe some of your stories and experiences that you might be carrying some shame around. So I thought we'd take a moment to share, like if anybody is open to it, to kind of practice this pro-social shame, experience, and wanting to offer this question to you all, like what does your financial shame prevent or accomplish? So I'll give an example while you all are thinking, and you can either share in the chat or you can come off mute here in a moment. But one example, like when I think about this, I've had a lot of challenges as I've been healing my money trauma. I definitely like have moved into, like, I was like had a lot of behavior and sometimes still around avoidance. Like I just avoid the financials. I don't want to look at the bank account. I don't want to set a budget. I don't want to do any of that because I'm like afraid to be like, am I overspending? Do I have like limited resources? Growing up in scarcity, like there's like parts of my brain and nervous system that kind of get activated when I think about it. And so when I think about this question, like by me avoiding my financials, by not digging into my financials, what is that preventing? That's preventing me from like saving. That's preventing me from like establishing some long-term goals of things that me and my partner might want to purchase one day, right? And so I'm curious about like, what does your financial shame prevent or accomplish? And if there are anybody who wants to share in the chat, feel free to do that. Or if there's anybody who wants to come off mute, you can either raise your hand or just come off mute.
I'll go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my name's Cassandra. I'm Navajo, Nigerian, British, and Irish, and I was born in Tuba City. I love this conversation. I remember just growing up in poverty, and um, I wrote some comments about that in the chat room, but it like we take on these values and beliefs that are not ours and that we're not worthy of having things. And it affects your self-esteem, because I used to see like our neighbors down the road, like our white neighbors in Flagstaff, with nice houses and nice cars and things. And I was like struggling without running water or electricity. I'm like, how come we don't have those things? And so the reservation and like these colonial institutions, like the systemic consequences of that made me feel like I wasn't worthy. And like fast forward to now, I got a college education and everything, and I helped start a successful nonprofit where we're very effective and impactful. I was able to save a lot of money because I, by happen chance, nobody taught me about finances, and I, by happen chance, came across Dave Ramsey on YouTube talking
Uh-huh.
about like savings and like emergency fund, and I'm like, oh, I should. This seems like useful information, and I was able to pay off my debt and save some money, but it was all mistakes. It was all like figuring it out in a maze by myself, and like, fortunately getting an education and like understanding a little bit about family finances and budgeting and stuff at college. But when I finally saved enough to buy my own home in Salt Lake City, which is a really tough market, I was getting turned down like over and over. And I didn't even understand why, because I was like, man, I have a big down payment. I meet the criteria. I worked my butt off for the credit score. Like, I think my credit score is like 800 or something, but I did everything and I was still getting beat out, just for like a small place. Come to find out, I'm competing against people who are offering $80,000 above cash, above a low appraisal, who have had generations of inheritance, passed down to them. They have multiple homes in Montana and the Aspens and wherever. And that's who I was competing against. And so it was like really difficult to even find a home and get into one. And I finally did. But even when I am in my home, I'm still upset about it because I'm paying for our own ancestral lands, like stolen lands. And this place that I bought, it was $40,000 years ago, and I bought it for $280,000. So just to see, like, to feel the microaggressions of like how money is flipped and stuff off our stolen lands, how difficult it is for us to even get into these markets. And I often describe my experience as like Stockholm syndrome, where I feel like I have to get along with my oppressor just to survive. And so there's like so many layers to it. So I really appreciate this conversation. It's very validating.
Yeah. Oh, Cassandra, just want to send you such positive energy for being willing, one, to share your story and just to open up and to tell us about your experiences, and everything you shared, like I so resonate with, and also is like very valid, like the feelings of like worthiness, the societal and like racial oppression and the systems we are in. And also I really felt that about like having to like buy this land and this home in this area of where these are my people's homelands, right? There's so much tied into all of that, right? So thank you so much for sharing and for like exemplifying just like an example of practicing like pro-social shame, and like just like want to validate you and send you a lot of love as you like heal and continue to like understand and raise awareness around just like the impact that trauma has. So yeah, for sharing so much. Just so you know, like I have another computer over here where I can see all your beautiful like faces and names. So if I'm looking this way, I'm looking at you. And so yeah, I'm kind of going back and forth between different screens. I see some people also shared in the chat. Deanna, it's so good to have you here. Deanna shared, because I've been in financial survival mode, I typically spend money as I get it. I haven't learned about investments or planning. Also not feeling worthy when I do get money. Deborah, I see yours. I become a miser. I catch myself living like a college student. And when I shop, I stock up items Some have expired on me. It's a process. Yeah. And a lot of this will connect with some of the topics we're gonna dive into next. But thank you so much for sharing. For those who have shared, if you want to continue sharing the chat, please, I welcome you to do that as well. So we're going to talk now about financial fawning and rejection. So financial fawning was actually coined by the program Trauma of Money. It's a response to trauma wherein we utilize money as a tool to seek security and attachment. This response often manifests as people-pleasing, excessive accommodation, and prioritizing others' needs over their own, even at the expense of their well-being. In other words, we may use our money as a please, love, and accept me fund in order to avoid conflict and or prevent being abandoned, rejected, or shunned. And let me tell you, I have a lot of stories and experiences about financial funding. And maybe we'll share a little bit here, but like just want to validate that I'm sure some of you resonate as well with financial fawning or having behaviors that are reflective of fawning. So fawning can be a preventative strategy. It's the underlying belief. The underlying belief is that fawning will ensure our safety and prevent another trauma from happening. So an example of this could be like a child that maybe growing up in a household where their caretakers, their parents like fight a lot, argue, and it causes a lot of stress on the child, right? And they want their parents to be happy. They want them to be like laughing and loving, right? And so they may end up going into some of this like fawning behavior where they're trying to do what they can to make their parent or caretaker happy. They're trying to make them feel better. They don't want them to fight. So they're like doing all the things they can, whether it's like making them gifts or buying them gifts or helping to cook dinner or whatever, right? Just doing all these things so to kind of keep the peace in the home. Another like component to this, like I'll go back to this definition again, is like excessive accommodation. So this could be where like you sacrifice yourself in situations to accommodate everybody else around you. So that again, it connects to that prioritizing other needs over your own. This can also be connected to that like please love and accept me. So like they're looking for a place of belonging, because a lot of times like when we've experienced trauma, we may be like feeling disconnected and not feeling like we belong to somebody, to some group, to some community. And that can really activate our nervous systems. And so you may do a lot of things to be like, please accept me, please love me, right? One personal example, like as I mentioned at the beginning, in regards to my own story, is that growing up with 3 other siblings and we all have different fathers, I had a lot of experience of what it feels like to feel like abandoned or rejected. And so I would step into this like role of like fawning to like buy things for people, like, you know, and I'm doing this to like buy their acceptance instead of just being like, I'm enough, you know, my presence is enough in this space, right? And so these are just some examples of how this type of behavior can show up. The other interesting thing about fawning is that although fawning is a well-documented trauma response today, it wasn't acknowledged until trauma researchers stopped neglecting identities who have been marginalized in their studies. So this reveals that fawning serves as an especially strategic and prevalent survival mechanism, particularly for individuals who have been oppressed within our racialized and patriarchal capitalistic society. So especially like those of us who are like have, you know, that we are Black and brown bodies, right? And we're living in this like racialized society, this patriarchal capitalistic society. We can go to these behaviors of fawning because we're trying to fit in. We're trying to fit in into this like what is like, you know, the American dream or being an ideal like American in this society, right? And so we can lean into these like kind of behaviors of just like wanting to belong. But as we like do that, we are self-sacrificing because we're having to give up a lot of like who we are and like actually like really like indigenous like values and practices we're having to give up to fit into the society. We're self-sacrificing, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. So these are some ways that financial fawning shows up. Some of it, like I talked about a lot, financial avoidance, or you just don't even want to like look at your finances and know about them, right? Another component might be under earning. Some of you are, entrepreneurs. You may be selling certain products, making and selling products, or you may also be providing a service, but you're undercharging, and so you're under earning, right? Or maybe you have a full-time job somewhere, and this connects to that financial rejection where you're like, I'm not deserving of more money than you're paying me right now. And maybe you have an amazing like supervisor who like recognizes all your gifts and talents and everything you're bringing to the team, and they want to give you a raise, and you're like, oh no, you don't have to do that. That's okay. And you're like rejecting, these like additional resources that you probably could really use, you and your family could use. And financial finding can show up that way, where you're like rejecting like resources, rejecting a raise, those types of things. Other ways it shows up is workaholism. This was me. This used to be me. I was like a workaholic. My whole identity was connected to whatever job or title I had. And I would just work until I ended up like burning out. And that was really bad. And so, this is some things that can happen when we are, practicing or like in these spaces of financial fawning, or overspending, just like spending more money than we're earning. Or maybe you have access to a lot of great resources, which is awesome, but you're still like overspending and you're not saving in a way to help set you up for any of those like future like long-term goals. Another person I want to highlight, if you're studying or just like starting like your own healing journey, Dr. Gabor Mate is like an incredible teacher and person to learn from. He's done a lot of work and studies. He has different books out around the impact that trauma has, like long term, but especially around healing and like releasing emotions. So traits seen in financial fawning that have been found, these have been found across all different autoimmune diseases. So this is why it's so critical to like learn about trauma and the impact it has, not just because it can like affect our mental and emotional health, but it can actually affect our physical health. And as somebody who has like different chronic health like conditions and challenges, I'm sure it's connected to some of my trauma. And it's challenging. It's really hard to have to like navigate things in life when your body is just not functioning well. But one of the things that Dr. Mate like really has studied and has shared a lot around is the suppression of anger, but also just suppressing like emotions in general. So for me, like growing up, I used to get some mixed messages around like emotions. Like one was like, Apryl, you're bottling up your emotions too much. Excuse me, I'm having something in my throat. You're like bottling up your emotions too much. Like you need to like express them and let them out, or else you're going to explode. I used to get like that message. And then I also got the message like, Apryl, you're too sensitive. Like, why are you always crying? I'm a very like empathic person, and I can sense like energy, and I have like really big feelings, and just can like sense like, yeah, just a lot of emotions within me, but around me too. And so as a kid, little things would just make me like waterworks would happen. And so I would get this message like, oh, Apryl, you're being too sensitive, right? And so then when that was like being told to me, I started to suppress a lot of like different emotions and not be able to like find ways to, in a healthy way, like talk about emotions, right? And I think like, especially in the type of society we live in, we don't like value emotions. We don't provide space for us to learn how to regulate emotions and how to talk about them. And so by suppressing like anger or other emotions, it can lead to different types of like physical health conditions. If you are in a place where you're prioritizing other people's needs over your own, that's going to bottle up over time, right? You might be really overdriven and like externally focused and like multitasking. This used to be me. I was like a workaholic. I was someone who could multitask. I was someone who could do like multiple things all at the same time. And I was just so in that mode, but that wasn't healthy for me after a while. I may have a rigid concern for social acceptance, justify one's existence by what they do and what they give. So like just my presence and existence should be enough. But in the society we live in, a lot of times your worthiness is based on like what you're producing, what you're doing, what you're giving to others, right? And you're harboring two beliefs, like I'm responsible for how others feel and I can't disappoint anyone. And this can all, like I said, result in a lot of different like physical health challenges. So from this list below, what basic need is your financial funding trying to meet? Let me check time. This could be something that I would suggest like as a reflection prompt, like you can do on your own, in your own time. If you journal, this could be a really helpful journaling prompt. Or maybe if you're not someone who journals, like, and you want to just like take a walk and like think about this. But from this list below, like what basic need is your financial funding trying to meet? Are you trying to meet a sense of belonging, autonomy, safety, expression, purpose, connection? Or maybe it's something else. And if you kind of have an idea and you know now and you want to share in the chat, feel free to do that. So I want to share a little bit more about this trauma of money method. And there are these different like 6 areas of this work, right? And so in trauma of money, like we believe the first kind of phase and step is to dive into the mind-body connection of trauma and its connection in relationship to money, and really spending time like understanding like what is my story, like what is the narrative, who does my narrative belong to, whose shame is this, where am I at in my window of resilience? And so we talked about that in the first session. And how can I access my window of resilience? Like how can I regulate my nervous system and my brain? And the reason we start here is because raising this type of self-awareness really helps to set you up for like the other phases of the conversation, the other phases of the work and trauma of money. One of the things that, you know, that is really becoming more like prevalent and more resources is around like financial literacy. And financial literacy is great, and we need those resources. And we need those resources specifically like tailored to Indigenous peoples and people of color. But if you haven't been in a place to really like reflect and heal from any trauma, your brain may not have the capacity to engage with that type of learning. So for example, like this is me. Like I have worked in different organizations, different like nonprofits. I've worked and like overseen like $1 million budgets, and I can handle that and I can work with that in those spaces. But when it comes to my personal finances, I'm like, like there's a lot of activation that happens. And so I know that there's some trauma things that I need to heal, right? To be able to dive into learning about like, oh, investments. Oh, how do I do that? Because like, again, when we are in a trauma activated state, it can shut off parts of our brain and it doesn't have the capacity to take in like actual financial literacy knowledge. And that's why in trauma of money, the first phase is really getting that, like reconnecting to our mind and body and healing those different components and getting that trauma out of our bodies and our systems. So then we can move into these other phases of work in the trauma of money program. So I want to spend, like I said earlier, I want to make sure that we have some time for you all to take home some resources and tips and other like things that you may want to dive into later as you're working on your own healing journey. So one of the things we talked about in the last session was around experimentation. And so when we switch our mindset to be like, I'm just going to try this out, I'm just going to experiment with this and see what it does and see what happens, you can be more open to just like any outcome that comes, and you're not worried about the perfectionism as much. You're not worried about like the outcome of something. You're just trying things out and want to see what works for you and what doesn't, right? And so these are some like experiments that you can try out. One is working with financial shame and trauma, and really starting to raise awareness around like, whose shame is this? Where is this coming from? And even just pausing and thinking about that when you're in certain situations. The other one is creating nervous system supports to support you accessing, in trauma money, we call it window of resilience, but I like to call it the window of Hajon, which I'll talk about here in a moment. Reframing past approaches as adaptive and creating new belief systems that are helpful. So like I mentioned, reframing like past experiences or things that you did that maybe you're carrying some shame around, but reframing those stories to be like, I had to do that to adapt to the situation, or I had to do that to survive, right? And now I'm going to start looking at some of those different past experiences in a different way. Diving into these 6 steps, the trauma of money method, and then reclaiming your financial agency through action, like actually taking some steps. And for some of us, it might be like baby steps to be able to start kind of like working that muscle and healing from some of those things. So in the last workshop, we talked more about this. If you like dive more into the work of like healing trauma, you're going to find resources around. In trauma money, we call it window of resilience. In other spaces, they call it window of tolerance. But as I was learning about this, I was like, this is like window of Hajon. And if in Diné culture, Hajon, has a lot of meaning, has a lot of sacredness. But one of them is like, Hajon means like balance, right? Balance, peace, and grounding. And so when we're in a place where maybe we're going to fight or flight mode, which would be like numbers 8 to 10, like you're having too much like hyperarousal, or 1 to 3 being too little, you're like in the freeze and fawning area. You want to work on regulating your nervous system and your brain to get back into like the 4 to 7 range, which is like the window of Hajon. Because if you are in the window of Hajon, this is a space where you actually can tap into the important parts of your brain that help you be more effective. It helps you make like good money decisions. It helps you to make like just rational, like access to your rational thinking part, right? And so sometimes when I'm in like a fight or flight mode, I got to do some things and practices to get me back to the window of Hajon. Or sometimes I am in the freeze or fawning, and I got to like wake up my body to get back into this window. And part of this work of healing is like we're rewiring our brain, which they call neuroplasticity. So we're wanting to create new neural pathways in our brain that help us start to reframe our mindset, that helps us heal like unhealthy mindsets and beliefs. And so some of the ways that you can do that is strengthening your connection to Indigenous values, especially for those of you like who are Indigenous, and even those who aren't. Like, this is an invitation to like connect to Indigenous values, learn about Indigenous values. I think one of the things that like is challenging in the society and that we live in is that like America is very in like this Western lens, and these are some of the values that Western societies like believe in and promote. And it's challenging for us though, because when we look at it through an Indigenous of the Western way of living and thinking. But the more that we can lean into and reconnect and strengthen our connection to these Indigenous values, the more like healing and like rewiring of our brain that can happen. At least that's been the experience for me. And it's, it's not impossible, but it can be challenging for some, especially if you don't have access to your community, or, maybe you are just starting your journey on reconnecting to your Indigenous identity. And so like finding spaces and ways and even like small steps that you can start like strengthening these Indigenous values in your daily life. And some examples of this are in connection to like redefining wealth, right? So in Western society, wealth is like money, right? Having access to a lot of resources, having all these materialistic things, right? But in Indigenous wealth, like these are just a few of the ways that we would define like that we are wealthy, right? Um, Reconnecting to our Indigenous identity, relearning, practicing, and using language, reconnecting to prayer, songs, and ceremonies, practicing traditional life ways in different capacities. You know, some of us live like on our homelands, others live like in urban areas, and so finding like those little spaces where you can actually connect and like integrate some of your own traditional life ways can be really nourishing and like really good medicine as we heal. Reconnecting and building our kinship and relationship with nature, land and water and all the elements, and reestablishing like healthy families and thinking about future generational planning. And so one of the examples I wanted to share with this slide was around Diné like practices. So I'm like a really bad Navajo who does not wake up like when the sun is coming up. But like as an example is that like, you know, in Diné culture, the practice of waking up when the sun comes up and going out and running towards the east, right? What I've learned is like that's where like the holy people are present. That's where like your prayers and connection to the spirit world can happen. You're running, so you're having that movement, you're moving that any stress or trauma in your body kind of getting out, right? Sometimes when you're running, you might be like saying a prayer, you might be like calling out or shouting, and that actually connects to your vagus nerve, which is part of your nervous system that helps to regulate your nervous system. So a lot of things are happening in that moment. You're out running, you're seeing, you know, the sun, you're connecting to that vitamin D, you are connecting to nature and the land, right? And so just thinking about like what practices can you integrate to like help you strengthen and increase like your Indigenous wealth. I also think a lot, I'm really passionate about like healing our families and like thinking about like what we do now and like how we raise our children and youth in a way that they are more prepared and resourced going forward. And so I don't have any children, but I have nephews and I have like other young people that I'm around. And I think a lot about like how I want to show up for them and to be a resource for saying, this is how like you can express emotions. It's okay to express emotions. Let's regulate together. These are some practices that you can do to help you, right? And so I just think about like all of our roles in different ways of healing and like reestablishing like healthy families. Another practice is around affirmations. So this practice here, there's a lot more studies going on around affirmations. And I found this resource through Choosing Therapy. They have an article on this. And I really love this because they talked about like how affirmations, different ways to choose it, how to use it, and how it can be impactful. Even when like there's moments like I'm feeling really down or I'm feeling really anxious about something, if I do like these positive affirmations, even though I'm like, I don't believe this right now, but if I just start saying them out loud, there's an energy and like a feeling that shifts in me. And all of a sudden, like my body is getting more regulated. I'm in that window of Hajjon. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can like even just pull these like affirmations off the internet and just say them to yourself. And we're going to practice here in a moment. Somatic practices. So if you just Google somatic practices, there's so many different things out there. And these are just a few of them that I wanted to highlight. We're going to practice the tapping here in a moment. But another one I wanted to talk about that really works for me is cold therapy. Like when I'm in a very activated state or I'm feeling really anxious, getting access to cold water or ice, even just like washing my face or putting like some like a cold compress around me, like really helps to regulate my system and helps me to get out of that like anxiety feeling. These are a lot of other ways that you can like practice somatic practices. Somatic practices is really basically like understanding the connection between the mind and the body and like integrating practices that help to release emotion and release like trauma that may be trapped in your body. So I thought I'd take a few minutes here to practice the tapping while also integrating affirmations. So what I'm going to ask is, if you feel comfortable and you're in a place where you can do this, I'm going to ask anybody who wants to come off of mute. And I'm going to show an example of tapping. And also I'm going to say an affirmation and I want you to like repeat it. We'll actually use these affirmations, some of these. So if I'm like in a state where like I am having anxiety about this presentation and I'm like, what am I doing? Well, I'm going out there to present on this topic. I'm nervous. Who am I? Am I really am I somebody that people want to listen to and learn this about? Like, I don't know if I know enough, right? I'm just having all of these like negative self-talk happening, right? I will do tapping. Tapping is really helpful. And what it is you're going to take like either like 2 or 3 fingers, if this is accessible to you. And you're just going to tap in different areas. I like to start from my head down. And if you want to come off mute, go ahead and come off mute now. And as I say an affirmation, I want you to repeat it back to me. Okay. And you're just going to tap. And we're going to move our fingers to different parts of our body, but you just like lightly tap. So I'll start with the affirmations. I am capable. You can repeat it back if you're off mute. I am capable.
I
am capable.
I am capable.
I am enough.
I
am
am
enough.
I am worthy.
I am
I am worthy.
I am deserving.
I am deserving.
I am deserving.
I am healing.
I am healing.
I am healing.
I am healing.
I am capable.
I am capable.
I am
I am
capable.
capable.
I am enough.
I am
I
enough.
am enough.
I am enough.
I am worthy.
I am worthy.
I am
I am
worthy.
worthy.
I am capable.
I am
I am capable.
I am enough.
I am
I
enough.
am enough.
I am worthy.
I am worthy.
I
I
am
am
worthy.
worthy.
I am deserving.
I am
I
deserving.
am deserving.
I am loved.
I am loved.
I am loved.
Anybody feel any changes in your body or your mind by doing that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is just one practice that you can integrate, and you can do this anytime that you might need it. And you can like Google on YouTube or get on YouTube and look up a lot of these other practices as well. I see people, I feel lighter. I am loved, made me smile. Yeah, it's amazing. Like I feel a little bit of tingliness. And sometimes like if I'm in a really like more depressive state and I do this, sometimes I have tears that come out, right? Like I just like, there's emotion in like the release of that. And it's amazing how like it can shift energy in you. And that's just by you doing that for yourself, right? You're not like going out and seeking that from anybody else. Like we are all resourceful. Another way to help with healing is therapy. So I've had 3 different therapists in my life. Each of them have helped me in different parts of my own healing. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of them here. One of them, Trauma Recovery Services of Arizona. This is owned by Jordana Sanders. She's been a great friend and contributor to Change Labs. We've had her at different events. And she has a therapy practice. If you're looking here in Arizona, if you are based in Arizona, they offer different type of therapy services. I think they also offer group therapy and virtual telehealth therapy options. They're a great resource even just to follow them to learn more about the healing journey. Another one in Arizona is Affirming You. And I'm a little biased here because one of my BFFs, Davina, I think she's on the call today. They are a therapist with the Affirming You practice. And so check them out as well. There's Najoni Counseling, that's in New Mexico. Indigenous Circle of Wellness is based in California. And one of my therapists I actually found through Psychology Today. Psychology Today is a really good resource, and it actually allows you to do like a search where if you have a certain like gender preference for your therapist or racial identity or like, you know, certain things you can punch in there and it'll like generate a list. And I found one of my therapists through Psychology Today. Books and publications, like take a screenshot, come back to this later. I won't have time to go through all of these different resources here, but I do want to highlight that some of these books were actually written by Trauma of Money alumni. And the one I want to highlight here is the Money Affirmations deck. So we talked about affirmations. If you're like, I don't know if I can like generate my own affirmations, buy this Money Affirmations deck and just have it next to you, and you can like just pull the card and read it every day. My colleague from Trauma of Money, her name is Nafasi. She's awesome. She like facilitates our BIPOC Trauma of Money alumni group. And her website is there, narrativesunbound.net, where you can find the resources. And then these are some publications from Indigenous scholars, Maria Yellow Horse Braveheart, who's done a lot of work around historical trauma, and Michael Yellowbird has done a lot of work around like decolonizing social work and mindfulness work. Ask Che Google if you want to learn more. These are like different like terms I just Googled. And in Navajo, Che is our maternal grandfather. And I had a Lakota friend one time be like, hey, you know, let's see what Grandpa Google like says. So I started calling it Che Google. So just ask Google. Like you can learn about all these different areas too and find a ton of resources out there. Trauma of Money is recruiting. So if you're interested in learning more about this topic and you want to like go through this program on your own, I highly recommend it. They have 2 tracks. One is a personal track where you can go through and do this learning for your own personal healing journey. And there's also the professional track, which is what I've done, and you can get certified and become a Trauma of Money facilitator and go out and conduct these workshops or integrate it in the work you're currently doing. They are taking registration for their spring cohort. I think their scholarship application has closed. So if you're like wanting to tap into those resources, I would just like start following them. And then in their next round of scholarship opportunities, I would apply. I was a scholarship recipient and so thankful that I was able to receive those resources to help me get the certification. So we have about 10 minutes here. I want to open up space for some discussion and also pose some questions here, like what thoughts or feelings came up for you? What is one thing you learned today? How does this learning apply to you personally and or as an Indigenous entrepreneur? And what questions or comments do you have? So yeah, I'll just open up the space for these last about 9 minutes, and then I have like a closing slide to share. Anybody want to share any comments, any questions?
I will. You never know what you're going to expect. Good afternoon, Che Valerie Sosi. Da shi jine do ashin shlot khitnes ni bashishtin. Twitchini da shi che do kabata shinale. Yeah, and so I'll go for Change Labs and you, April.
Good to see you, Valerie.
You never know what you're going to get, right? And I always wonder, how can we talk about this and decolonize? I love this. I missed part of the first part, but even the tapping and the affirmations, like for us in the Diné side, we have a lot of that. And sometimes we might be a little bit afraid to talk about it or something. I think you did an amazing job. I'm so glad that I came in. The tapping does absolutely help. You know, even when in this climate, you know, we got to have self-care, and tapping back into those is, I just appreciate you and Change Labs so much, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Go ahead and Sago, Valerie. I'm so happy you showed up for yourself today, and I'm so glad you joined us in community, and I appreciate all the work that you do too for our caregivers and our elders in our community. So any other questions or comments? I see some of the comments in the chat. Deanna says, it's never too late to learn about these things. This is so true. Like, it is never, ever too late to get and start like an intentional healing journey. Cassandra, this workshop has been so validating. I feel seen and heard. More, please. Cassandra, for being here. I'm excited you're here in Tuba City. I hope that we can like connect somehow too. Larice, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. This is definitely informative and relevant, and I was able to identify with so much of it. Whew. And I'm so grateful for your wisdom and you sharing with us. Anna, thank you so much for being here today. There's so many people in here that like I love so much from different aspects. And Anna was actually my college professor. And now we've like been in space together in so many different wonderful, beautiful ways. So thank you. Layla, there are so many layers here and it was facilitated so beautifully. I'm definitely going to go back to this recording and make a commitment to understand more about myself. Thank you, Layla, for being here. Oh, I appreciate all the shout outs and the beautiful like comments, and this is really like helpful and also really like validating for me too. Like this is the second solo workshop I've done, and I'm very passionate about like sharing space with others and healing. And like I just, especially within Indigenous communities and BIPOC communities, and this just helps me to know like people are connecting in that. Like I should keep going. I should keep trying to bring more of this space into our communities in a good way. So I just, feeling like kind of emotional about that. So thank you so much. Sherman, I see your comment. Grateful I'm not alone in this struggle. Great workshop. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else want to come off mute and share any last things?
Hi, April. Just wanted to remind everybody before they log off, like definitely if you are joining us for the first time, check out our What's Your Relationship with Money with April. It's on our YouTube channel. So if you want a continuation or the beginning of this workshop, definitely head on over there to check that out.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sophia. Yeah, if others want to share, you're still welcome to. I do want to share like some offerings here with you all. So as I mentioned, obviously I'm a trauma money facilitator. So if you or your business or your organization you work with would love to have some of these conversations, I'm available. Like reach out to me. I'd love to come and present or facilitate discussions in different spaces. So that's one offering. The other one too is I'm actually certified and trained in the adverse childhood experiences trainings. It's usually a 2-day training, a 2 full day training. I have not had an opportunity yet to do that training, but I'm really looking forward to that. And so if if your business or your organization that you work for is interested in just like becoming more trauma aware in the work you do, that's a really good workshop to tap into. And I just recently, along with others on this call, graduated from the Coaching for Healing, Justice, and Liberation program. Shout out to all my coach fam on the call today. There's many of you here. And I'm a liberatory coach. And so if you're wanting to work with me one-on-one, I am seeking coach partners right now. If you are I love to hold space for people who are needing or wanting to release different emotions. Maybe you're having some limiting beliefs. Maybe you're living in scarcity and you're trying to shift some of those mindsets. And it also doesn't have to even be related to money. It could be other aspects of your healing that you want to work on and process. I love holding space for all of those things. We might do some somatic practices in this session. We might do some visualization work. We might dive into other aspects of your healing. And so if you're interested in one-on-one coaching practice with me, please send me an email. I have my email there. This is the work that I do outside of my role in Change Labs as of right now. I'm also on Instagram if you want to connect with me there. But those are just some offerings that I have. And like I said, my calendar is pretty open right now for liberatory coaching practice, but hopefully it'll fill up. So and hopefully some of you will be the ones that reach out for us to connect, and feel free to share this information with other people. Any other last questions or comments? my aunt's on the call. I love my Aunt Laverne. She posted our Che, which is Che, had an 8th grade education from Sherman Institute in California, and he's so good with his money, with great credit rating. It's a journey to realize that I'm this poverty consciousness place. I'm better now. Sending you so much love, Auntie. She's right about my Che. He always talks about money. It was really good with his money. Nanabai, see, incredible and so necessary for me now. I'm definitely in that perfection mode. It can be a deterrent for sure. This was powerful. And to answer your question, can we have a space for organizations that we can reach out to in various states? Is this in relation to like other like certain types of organizations? I don't know if my Aunt Laverne, is she still on the call? We can connect too if you want to after this. Well, that is all I have for today. Sophia, Raquel, is there any last announcements you all want to make?
I don't know if Sophia's having trouble with sound, but hello everyone. I am Raquel. I am the teammate here at Change Lab, Tuba City eShip Hub. I work with April here at our hub space, and April has been a really great support of receiving our guests that we receive here at the eShip Hub, because the majority of our team here, if you're not already familiar with Change Labs, the majority of our team does work from their home offices. So we do have our in-person team here at Tuba City that are able to receive folks with any questions that you have, with resources that we provide, the tools that we have here at the hub, also the different services that we offer virtually, especially our one-on-one coaching, our workshops like we have for today. And then we have another fun service that we're providing this year, a whole stream of, or series, I should say, of workshops that are led by our in-house team. So our own coaches that we have, including our co-founders, Jessica Stago, Heather Fleming, our finance officer, Marsha Gray Eyes, and then the rest of our great coaches, including April as well, will be on our coaching lineup. So if you go to our website, native.org/coaching, you can see the whole lineup and you can access their coaching links. This is for Native entrepreneurs and small business owners. It doesn't have to be specifically Navajo or Hopi or regional tribes that are our neighbors here in Northern Arizona. So please reach out, or if you know of anybody who might be interested in signing up for coaching, logging into our workshops, coming to our eShip Hub, attending our grand opening of our Shiprock space that's coming up later this year. You can stay tuned for more information on that, so you get more and more plans solidified, and hopefully everything stays on time. As you know, a lot of things and a lot of movement on moves at res time. So we're trying to usher it along the process as quickly as we can. But thank you all so much for being here. It's really great to see everybody here, especially those of the Change Lab teams that I haven't seen in a while, like Tim. Tim's one of our coaches as well, and some of our cohort alumni members, Valerie, I saw Aaron, I saw Leander. It was really, really great to see a lot of familiar faces and new faces. And I'm so thankful, we're so thankful for April's network to show up and contribute to our space here. It was really exciting to see all of the participation of the tapping and answering questions and providing some vulnerable contributions to our space here that we wanted to make sure that we provide for everybody, especially with the wrapping up of last year and the launching of this year and everything so turbulent right now. It was really great to kind of just come centered and tap into the resources that April was able to share with us. So thank you so much, April. Everyone, if you didn't get to hear this morning, we are recording today. So as soon as we get this video edited, which should be super quick, we'll have it ready on our YouTube channel for rewatching. And then if you have any questions, April shared her contact information on her last slide. But if you reach out to us at our email, hello@nativestartup.org, we can also get April's contact information to you if you didn't get a chance to screenshot it. But thank you all so much. I see everybody starting to drop off. You have a great, wonderful, warm, safe day. Drink some water, eat some good food, as my great colleague Holly likes to say as she signs off. But thank you all so much. We will see you next time. All right. Have a good day.
Take care,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Yay, April. Sorry. Yeah, my screen share is not the best.
No, you're good. You're
Okay.
totally good. So there's a Change Labs workshop poll, and I didn't want to touch it because I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
I
yeah.
Are you
Yes,
guys,
yes,
do you
you
have
can.
access to it? I close it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
My Aunt Laverne is still in the call. Hey, Auntie.
Oh, I can't log off.
Let's see if I can help you. Thank you for coming.
See, I don't see anything that says where I can log off.
I
Are
got
you on
you,
your-
Laverne.
Oh,
Okay,
Okay.
Thank
you for
you.
coming. Yes.
bye.
We'll see ya.
bye.
Ooh, I almost lost my voice. I was like, oh my God. Oh.
Okay. Got her logged off. And then whenever you want to regroup, we can go ahead and do the little short introduction that we're gonna add.
Okay. And we're doing it on here, right? On
Yeah,
Zoom
we're
right
just
now?
we're just gonna
Okay.
keep going with it. Yeah.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
Hold
And
on,
if you have to do
whoever's sharing screen needs to stop sharing screen.
Okay, I will stop.
And then spotlight April,
Okay.
so that it's just her on the screen.
Looks
Perfect.
good, Raquel?
Yep.
Okay.
And then April, if you can back up just a little bit, just so you fill only about 2/3 of the screen, because it's gonna be the IG reel format. So it's gonna be a long
Oh.
ways. So just so
Okay.
they don't have to zoom super close on your face.
Okay, yeah. That'd be weird. Okay, hold on. Let me get my outline up here so I can talk from it. It's so funny, like last time when we did this, Raquel, I'm like, this part made me like more nervous than all the other parts of the
Then your
session.
whole presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh my God, okay. Okay.
No, and you did well. You did well. So very similarly to last time, you do an introduction of yourself, however you'd like to do that. And then and that's something along the lines of like, in this session as a continuation from part one, or something like kind of tying in part one and then leading into the content you covered in this session.
Okay. All right.
Anyways.
Let me just think for a second. Am I far enough?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. Yat A, Sha'e April Yanishya. Today I am going to talk about trauma of money. Oh, no, see, I don't like that. Stop. Cut. All right. Yat A, Sha'e April Yanishya. Welcome to the second part of this conversation around our relationship with money. So in today's session, we're going to be diving deeper into understanding financial shame and how it impacts our brains, bodies, and behaviors. We're going to talk more about financial fawning and rejection and ways to heal. And a number of resources and practices are going to be shared. So hopefully you can go home with some different types of tools that you can integrate within your daily life, as well as connection and reconnection to Indigenous values and practices and how that can help us in our healing journey. Thank you so much for diving in and wanting to learn more about this topic. Yeah, I don't know about that. What do y'all think?
It was great. If you want, you can also do another one. I think Jess went like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And then Keith will pick the best one.
Okay, yeah, he did that the last time. I was like, oh, you did a good job piecing that together.
Yes, if you just want to do another take, you're more than welcome to.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just pause like a half moment in between your sentences.
That's right.
In case
need to cut.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yat A, everybody. Sha'e April Yanishya. I am a trauma of money facilitator, and I'm excited to share this second part of this continuation of the discussion around assessing and learning more about our relationship with money. Today, we're going to talk about financial shame, financial fawning and rejection, and how those show up in our relationship to money, as well as different behaviors in the way that trauma may show up in our daily life and ways to heal. This session is also going to focus a lot on different practices and resources that you can actually integrate within your life and learn more about this topic to help support you in your healing journey. Thank you so much for wanting to watch this video today.
I like it.
The last part. And the hiding. Instead of slowing down.
Okay, so maybe do the last part again, ending on a high note.
Okay. Okay.
So that way it matches the same as the beginning of what we were talking
I
about.
kind of faded off. Yeah. Okay. As part of this session, we're also going to be diving into some practices and resources that you can integrate into your daily life to help you on your healing journey. And I'm really excited to share some of these tips and just different things that you can integrate that are easy and accessible to you to help you on your self-care and healing journey. Is that better?
Yeah, I like it. Maybe
kind of
one
bumped
more
it there.
time, just
Okay.
because I don't know if it was just our internet, but it staticked. So I don't know if the
Okay.
recording picks it up that way but just maybe one more time. Thank you.
The last part or the whole thing one more time?
The last part.
Okay. I'll just shake some of the nerves out here. As part of today's session, we are also going to tap into different practices and resources that you can integrate in your daily life that I hope are accessible to you and help you with your self-care and your healing journey. So thank you so much for tuning in. I don't know about that. Do you want me to do it again?
If you want, but I think he can take that first part and the last part. But if you want to do
Okay.
it in one take again, you're more than welcome to.
Okay. We'll try one more time here.
Okay.
As part of this session, we're also going to be diving into different practices and resources that you can integrate in your life that are hopefully accessible to you and help you with your self-care and healing journey as well.
Ooh, I like that one.
Was that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other takes?
Raquel, we good?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you,
I'm gonna
April.
log off.
Okay.
Sago, Valerie. I'm so happy you showed up for yourself today, and I'm so glad you joined us in community. And I appreciate all the work that you do too for our caregivers and our elders in our community. So, any other questions or comments? I see some of the comments in the chat. Deanna says, it's never too late to learn about these things. This is so true. It is never, ever too late to get and start an intentional healing journey. Cassandra, this workshop has been so validating. I feel seen and heard. More, please. Cassandra, for being here. I'm excited you're here in Tuba City. I hope that we can connect somehow too. Larice, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. This is definitely informative and relevant, and I was able to identify with so much of it. Whew. And I'm so grateful for your wisdom and you sharing with us. Anna, thank you so much for being here today. There's so many people in here that I love so much from different aspects. And Anna was actually my college professor. And now we've been in space together in so many different, wonderful, beautiful ways. So thank you. Layla, there are so many layers here and it was facilitated so beautifully. I'm definitely going to go back to this recording and make a commitment to understand more about myself. Thank you, Layla, for being here. Oh, I appreciate all the shout outs and the beautiful comments and this is really like helpful and also really like validating for me too. Like this is the second solo workshop I've done, and I'm very passionate about like sharing space with others and healing. And like, I just, especially within Indigenous communities and BIPOC communities, and this just helps me to know like people are connecting in that. Like I should keep going. I should keep trying to bring more of this space into our communities in a good way. So I just, feeling like kind of emotional about that. So thank you so much. Sherman, I see your comment. Grateful I'm not alone in this struggle. Great workshop. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else want to come off mute and share any last things?
Hi, April. Just wanted to remind everybody before they log off, like definitely if you are joining us for the first time, check out our What's Your Relationship with Money with April. It's on our YouTube channel. So if you want a continuation or the beginning of this workshop, definitely head on over there to check that out.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sophia. Yeah, if others want to share, you're still welcome to. I do want to share like some offerings here with you all. So as I mentioned, obviously I'm a trauma money facilitator. So if you or your business or your organization you work with would love to have some of these conversations, I'm available. Like reach out to me. I'd love to come and present or facilitate discussions in different spaces. So that's one offering. The other one too is I'm actually certified and trained in the adverse childhood experiences trainings. It's usually a 2-day training, a 2 full-day training. I have not had an opportunity yet to do that training, but I'm really looking forward to that. And so if if your business or your organization that you work for is interested in just like becoming more trauma aware in the work you do, that's a really good workshop to tap into. And I just recently, along with others on this call, graduated from the Coaching for Healing, Justice, and Liberation program. Shout out to all my coach fam on the call today. There's many of you here. And I'm a liberatory coach. And so if you're wanting to work with me one-on-one, I am seeking coach partners right now. If you are I love to hold space for people who are needing or wanting to release different emotions. Maybe you're having some limiting beliefs. Maybe you're living in scarcity and you're trying to shift some of those mindsets. And it also doesn't have to even be related to money. It could be other aspects of your healing that you want to work on and process. I love holding space for all of those things. We might do some somatic practices in this session. We might do some visualization work. We might dive into other aspects of your healing. And so if you're interested in one-on-one coaching practice with me, please send me an email. I have my email there. This is the work that I do outside of my role in Change Labs as of right now. I'm also on Instagram if you want to connect with me there. But those are just some offerings that I have. And like I said, my calendar is pretty open right now for liberatory coaching practice, but hopefully it'll fill up. So and hopefully some of you will be the ones that reach out for us to connect, and feel free to share this information with other people. Any other last questions or comments? My aunt's on the call. I love my Aunt Laverne. She posted our Che, which is Che, had an 8th grade education from Sherman Institute in California, and he's so good with his money, with great credit rating. It's a journey to realize that I'm this poverty consciousness place. I'm better now. Sending you so much love, Auntie. She's right about my Che. He always talks about money. It was really good with his money. Nanabai, see, incredible and so necessary for me now. I'm definitely in that perfection mode. It can be a deterrent for sure. This was powerful. And to answer your question, can we have a space for organizations that we can reach out to in various states? Is this in relation to other certain types of organizations? I don't know if my Aunt Laverne, is she still on the call? We can connect too if you want to after this. Well, that is all I have for today.